A bright light, a tunnel, a flash of a life's worth of memories. What happens in those final moments before we breathe our last breath? And afterward? Where, if anywhere, do we go? And what is the life, the memories, the legacy we leave behind? These are questions theologians, philosophers, and, well, everyone has grappled with for centuries.
Philosophy is the art of dying, and it always has been the art of dying.
Death remains the ultimate mystery. And for a society obsessed with finding answers, shining light into every dark corner, conquering the unknown, this makes death scary and confusing.
We're puzzled by it, it puzzles the will, as Hamlet says.
As a scientist, my whole profession is running experiments and finding data to answer big questions. But when it comes to what happens after death, science offers little comfort. Is there a soul? To be honest, we just don't know. But what I can do as a scientist is explore a slightly different question. One whose answer we all have some control over. What makes a death good?
A good death is a death that does not have a ton of physical or spiritual or existential or emotional pain.
Having a good death means being calm and at peace with your choices.
There are different ways to think about a good death. And few people know this better than the chaplains who work in hospitals and cancer centers. Unlike the doctors who are trying to keep their patients alive, the chaplains quite often are preparing people to die, and it's not one size fits all.
For some people, like having a long, drawn-out end-of-life experience where they really get to process everything is a good death for them. For other people, they would just want to go kind of quickly in their sleep.
Not all of us have our wits, or even words in those final days, weeks, or months. But to the extent that we can plan, the transition from this world, this body, to whatever is next can be peaceful, even joyful on some level, whether it's the comfort of prayer or something else.
She said, well, okay, I want to do some planning. I'm a planner. So could you read T.S. Eliot's 4 quartets to me as I'm dying? And also, can you play Madonna?
On this episode, we'll talk to hospital chaplains about how they deal with constant death in their work.
Working with cancer patients has helped me actually see death as part of vitality and part of life.
About how to overcome our fears of death, with or without religion as a guide.
It's a question of how you can accept mortality into your life as that which structures your existence and not despair.
And we'll learn about a new way of crossing the threshold from this world to whatever may lie beyond.
3 or 4 singers only circle the bedside and sing very soft melodies. Someone will be completely unresponsive, and they will start to sing with us.
I'm Dave DeSteno, and this is How God Works. Death is a natural part of life, but that doesn't mean we have to like it. Pain is natural too, but we take aspirin. Still, concerns about death do seem to rise to the top of people's worry lists. And there's a good reason.
Terror of annihilation.
That's fair.
Terror of annihilation.
That's philosopher Simon Critchley. He wrote The Book of Dead Philosophers, which is a look at about 200 of the world's most famous philosophers, their lives, deaths, and thoughts on death. And when he says annihilation, he's not being dramatic. He means it. The idea that what awaits us on the other side is nothingness. To most, that's pretty terrifying.
We don't want our death to be meaningless. We don't just want to become worm food. And with the breakdown in organized or a collective belief in the afterlife, immortality of the soul, then we're puzzled by it.
So if we can't make sense of something, especially something scary, we tend to ignore it, hide it away.
We've rendered death obscene, I think. We've rendered death as invisible as possible. And that is extremely peculiar.
Peculiar because death is ever present. Life is defined by its beginning, duration, and ultimate end. There is no life without death. And sooner or later, it happens to all of us.
We live in a sort of death-phobic culture, and we have a really hard time talking about it or normalizing it, which I do think seeds anxiety and fear in a lot of ways.
Maude Quinn is a chaplaincy intern at Boston's Dana-Farber Cancer Institute and in her first year at Harvard's Divinity School.
I sort of operate with this assumption that in order to have a meaningful death, we should think about death more.
According to Simon, that's what philosophy is all about.
To philosophize is to learn how to die and to have death constantly present to you, constantly kind of in your face. I think that's a very ancient understanding of philosophy and one which needs to be revived, right? In the face of a culture which is based on what Becker called the denial of death, right? We have to focus on the centrality of death. For Socrates, it's a question of how you can accept mortality into your life as that which structures your existence and not despair.
Simon is a case in point. For someone who thinks and writes about death often, he isn't morbid. He approaches it like any other part of life.
I think our relationship to death is a bit like the Victorians' relationship to sex. The Victorians were good at death, bad at sex, and we apparently good at sex and bad at death. So I think we need to get good at death, and sex can take care of itself. I don't know.
I mean, that's fair, but what does philosophy tell us about dying well so that we don't have that fear as it approaches?
There's a fantastic essay by Montaigne, who invented the genre of the essay, called "To Philosophize is to Learn How to Die." Montaigne says that he developed the habit of having death constantly in his mouth, in the food he ate, in the drink he imbibed, in the words he spoke, in the kisses he gave and received, in everything. There's a little death in each of these actions. He said it used to be an ancient custom that during feasts and celebrations that a skeleton would be brought out and kind of waved around in the air to remind the diners and the drinkers that this is how they're going to end up. I often think about that as a kind of innovation in New York restaurants, that you could introduce a kind of skeletons and so this is what you're going to look at when you finish your sushi.
I'm not sure how much traction that restaurant concept would get, but there are other ways to keep death in our minds. There's even an app for it.
I have this app called WeCroak. The logo is a little frog, and it notifies me, 4 or 5 times a day. Every few hours, my phone pings me, and it says, "Don't forget you're going to die. Open for a quote." So I theoretically think about death several times a day because my phone is reminding me.
Whether it's an app, habit, or ritual, Simon says this constant preoccupation with death is a good thing.
So there's this extraordinary line which Montaigne also has where he says that he who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave. It doesn't mean that the fear of death has gone, but you're no longer a slave to it. Slavery, on this view, for Montaigne, would be the slavery to the fear of death, the terror of annihilation. It's that keeps us enslaved. And this leads to a really peculiar and provocative thought for us, which is that if it's the fear of death that keeps us enslaved, then freedom consists in accepting our mortality, accepting the fact that our life is circumscribed by, defined by, death's inevitable and ineluctable approach. We have this idea of freedom as a kind of unencumbered sphere of activity. I'm free to do this, that, and the other. I'm free from all constraint. Whereas the opposite, I think, is true. Freedom, human freedom, only exists by virtue of the constraints of mortality. And once that mortality has been accepted, has been placed in your mouth, then you can live freely. So a philosophical approach to death would be to try as much as possible to live without moral hypocrisy. And the moral hypocrisy here would be that of just, not wanting to talk about death.
But philosophy isn't the only tradition that offers tools to help us confront death.
Religious traditions are also in many ways richer because there's a very clear sense of a self which is defined in relationship to a greater power, a God, or whatever it might be, and where your existence is understood as vulnerable and dependent on a higher power. So, in a sense, the religious traditions that we still enjoy the kind of remains of are very good resources for thinking about our mortality.
From an Orthodox Christian perspective, there's this concept of the remembrance of death.
Sarah Byrne-Martelli is a palliative care chaplain and bereavement coordinator at Mass General Hospital in Boston.
You're supposed to, it's like in St. Paul and Corinthians writes, I die daily, or just this concept that we should always be aware that we are mortal beings. I think it can create humility and a sense of repentance and a sense of wanting to be kind and wanting to be loving and express your love, because you don't know what tomorrow will bring.
I think the other thing about religion in general, Christianity in particular, is the sense that everyone is flawed. We're flawed and we've done things that we regret, and those things can be forgiven. The key thing would be accepting our limitation. We're the weakest reeds in nature, as Pascal said. A little virus can wipe us away, as we've seen the last couple of years. And our existence is defined by inconstancy, boredom, and anxiety for most of the time. We find it very difficult to stay quietly in a room. But to accept those limitations of human existence as enabling and freeing.
Contemplating death, having it in our mouths, as Montaigne says, enables us to live in a way that helps us accept it when the time comes. It helps ensure we'll have fewer regrets when we look back. But what about when we look forward? When we worry about what, if anything, is on the other side of the veil? Is there a difference if you're a person of faith? Here's Sarah again.
I know, just generally speaking, a lot of people, religious or not, still have a strong sense or a hope that they will be reunited with loved ones after death, and that is often a very profound consolation. I have been with so many people at end of life who see loved ones. Is it psychological? Is it some mystical thing? I don't know. I really don't know. But what I do is I hold open that space for people.
They say there are no atheists in a foxhole. And from Sarah's experience, there seems to be some truth to that, at least when it comes to what we're all hoping to find. But is belief in an afterlife just a comforting illusion? One that cold, hard reason should lead us to discount? Well, according to Simon, even the most rational person can't definitively discount the afterlife.
The reality or unreality of the afterlife is kind of up in the air, has to be up in the air. Metaphysically, we'll never reach a kind of final determination.
Since there's no way to know for sure whether there's an afterlife, at least from a scientific perspective, the question to me is, what does believing in one do? Does it help us? According to the research, it does. People who firmly believe in an afterlife have the least anxiety about death, both in general and when they're facing their own head-on. It's also not the case, as some strident atheists have said, that belief in an afterlife devalues life here on Earth. The data show that well-being is improved not just for the religious, but for those around them too. And when it comes to judging a life at the very end, the way your life affected others may be what's most important.
I don't believe in the afterlife, I believe in the life of those that come after. It's what's left behind and who's left behind and what connection your life has to those lives which are going to succeed yours. The ancient Greeks had this idea of what they called glory, which was how your life was seen as a whole after your death. We ask the question of the meaning of life from within life, but when Sophocles says in one of the plays called No Man Happy Until He Is Dead, what's meant by that, I think, is that you can't really make a judgment about the quality of someone's life until it's over. And if that life is over, then that life will consist in good stories that are told about that person. And that's what the Greeks call glory.
That glory, or what some might call grace, isn't just about big acts of kindness. According to Ruth Delfiner, a Jewish and interfaith chaplain at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Dana-Farber, Judaism focuses on the smaller daily kindnesses, the ways you treat others, and the amends you make if you fall short.
Often there's hubbub about relationships that are not healed. In Judaism, before you ask God for forgiveness, you have to repair your relationships with people, and only then can you try to repair your relationship with God. I think that's true in dying, too. You have to, as much as you can, repair your relationships with the real world and then repair your relationships with the world of spirit.
None of us are perfect. But in death, we want to believe, to know, not just that we've made up for what we did wrong, but also that we made a positive impact with what we did right. That's something else Ruth tries to help her patients with.
I think that we've all had moments in our life where we really were the self we wanted to be. We need to be reminded of what we were capable of at our best, because we all remember what we're capable of at our worst, right? And that it's not lost, that nothing gets lost.
One thing about humans is that we have self-awareness. And with that, it means we don't only live in the moment. It means we can kind of mentally time travel. And that has allowed us to do fantastic things. But it has also brought on many anxieties in many ways, the end of ourselves being one. What do you think about that? Is self-awareness a benefit? Is it a plus? Or is it a minus to living in this world?
What a piece of work is man. How noble in reason.
This semester I'm teaching Shakespeare's Hamlet. Here is the most self-aware person that we could ever imagine, Hamlet. And how does that work for him? Well, it leads him to doubt everything. Doubt the world, doubt Denmark, doubt his mother, doubt Ophelia, doubt everything.
What is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me.
So in a sense, there's the night kitchen of self-consciousness is that way in which we can turn on ourselves and find ourselves wanting and find the world devoid of any certainty, any possibility of a firm basis. And that kind of generalized doubt, I think it's hard to get around. So we think of self-consciousness as a kind of huge achievement. Maybe sometimes it's just better to be aware than continually self-aware.
In some ways, if evolution has equipped us with the ability for self-awareness that allowed humans to do tremendous things and plan ahead and think through time and have abstract thought, it may be, to me, that one of the roles of religion and philosophy is, and I'm not saying whether religion is divinely given or the result of people figuring things out. People can believe what they want. But it is, in some sense, a cultural adaptation to soothe the downside that comes with that evolutionary self-awareness. And while self-awareness leads to deep questioning throughout life, death has a way of focusing that interrogation even more. As time dwindles, certain questions take on a new urgency.
If I really do only have 6 months or a year or 3 weeks, where do I want to be and who do I want to be with?
Why me? In the case of your best friend dying, why not me?
What do I really need right now?
Does a life that is cut off at 24 have the same meaning as one that is cut off at 88?
What does it really mean to belong?
Do I really believe all this?
What meaning did my life have?
What am I leaving behind? How will people remember me?
It's the rabbis, ministers, priests, and chaplains like Sarah, Maude, and Ruth who not so much offer answers, but help people find their own.
Why me is a question that absolutely has no answer, right? So we have to sort of explore more what is your sense of disappointment, to whittle the questions down to ones that you can actually answer for yourself. you clear away the bric-a-brac. I was thinking the bric-a-brac is guilt, shame, fear, disappointment, anger. You work your way through those so that you can get to the sustaining and the reintegrating parts of their lives, the things that they really want to still claim and hold up as emblematic of who they've been and what they've accomplished. I think that's the spiritual work. It answers the question of who was I in my life, having a sense of understanding that your life may not have been chaotic or random, though it felt that way, but that it actually did have a tenor which was individually and truly yours.
There's something about end-of-life care that is not that different from other types of spiritual care, in the sense that we all live in uncertainty all the time, and most of our narratives of control are illusions. So how do we greet that uncertainty, and how do we find pockets of connection in the midst of it?
When you know death is on the horizon, thinking about how to prepare is important. To make sure you've done what you've needed to find peace, to reinforce or even repair connections with loved ones. But at the moment when death draws near, when you're facing it in reality, as opposed to the abstract, thinking, reasoning, philosophizing can fail you. As you feel yourself slipping away, it's natural, human, to want to grip more tightly and hold on to life. Because we're uncertain about what comes next, because we don't want to leave those we love, because, quite simply, it's the end of everything we've ever known. In those moments, reason is cold comfort. It's here that ritual may be able to offer something that philosophy doesn't, a way to shape our experience by doing rather than by thinking.
For both religious and non-religious folks, ritual can be a really helpful way to process our emotions in our bodies, to make our internal experiences real in some way externally. So I've been in situations where even something really simple like having family members gather around a patient's bedside and share a reading, or even I might offer a blessing and other family members add something that they're hoping for, can help create some structure around things that feel overwhelming.
But while rituals might seem simple, that belies the wisdom that created them. When it comes to crossing the threshold of death, what people need most is comfort and connection, and it's here that rituals shine. Take Catholicism's last rites. As its name suggests, it's not one rite, but a combination of three that, together, are perfectly suited to meet the needs at hand. In confession, the dying get one last chance to cleanse their soul, to ask forgiveness for the actions they regret. In anointing of the sick, the priest rubs holy oil on the dying person's head or chest, while asking God to relieve their pain and worry and raise them to heaven. And in Viaticum, the final Holy Communion, Catholics believe Jesus is right there with them as they pass. While all this is taking place, the dying and the priest often recite prayers together, while the priest gently holds their hands or touches their heads. And it's through the slowing of breathing that comes from ritualized prayer and the touch of his hands that the body sends signals to the brain that all is well, that this is a safe place, that the dying person isn't alone. When Hindus near death, comfort and connection also come to the fore. The dying are brought to a place where they feel safe, usually their own bedroom. Surrounded by family and friends, they often sing songs together and recite mantras meant to purify their souls for rebirth. In fact, across traditions, rituals for the dying often include song, and with good reason. Research shows that singing calming music together slows the heart and breathing rates, which brings on feelings of peacefulness, connection, and calm. Feelings that, in turn, can help a person let go. A new movement recognizes the power of this type of ritual, a ritual of communal singing, spiritual or secular, to help ease people's passing.
My father was dying of pancreatic cancer in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from, and I saw this choir.
Leigh Davis is a teacher and artist, and the choir she saw that day consisted of a small group of women singing softly at the bedside of a dying patient.
And I asked them if I could learn more, and then they allowed me to shadow them, which basically meant following them around to watch what they do. And that was enough to understand this is incredible.
What Leigh had witnessed and later joined was something called a threshold choir.
So the whole concept of threshold choir is that 3 or 4 singers only circle the bedside and sing very soft melodies, and the songs are all written by threshold members.
The practice first started about 20 years ago in San Francisco with a woman named Kate Munger.
Kate's friend was dying of AIDS, and she was at his bedside singing because that's what felt most right for her and the time, for 2.5 hours as he was dying. And that experience fueled her to start this threshold choir. Rest in each breath. Really, the aim of this choir is to ease the ill, the dying, the families surrounding those who are passing away in their last moments, or just to ease someone who's ill and needs to rest or needs that comfort. I mean, that's what also drew me to this choir is I really do love the repertoire of this choir. The songs are secular. We don't speak to any God. So I think there's something to be said about it serving a lot of people who may or may not have specific beliefs. There are many different songs that are slow and soft. There are more joyful, upbeat songs. There are more mantra-like songs. And depending on the situation and who you're singing to, they can shift, and you sort of read the room to understand what that person might need. It's really in the moment when you cross the threshold of the door that you have a sense. And the singer, who we call an anchor, starts the song that feels right in the moment. Calming, resting, breathing. Yeah, one of my favorite songs is called Calming, Resting, Breathing. That's the first line. I lay my burdens down. That's the second line. That's the whole song. Resting, breathing. I lay my burdens down. Often when someone's alone, when they don't have family or anyone sitting next to them, the songs themselves, the way they feel, you start to breathe with them. And your heart rate goes down, basically, for anyone, not just for the ill or dying. Beyond weeping. These songs are so wonderful, and really they're asking you to slow down, breathe, and allow yourself to let go. I mean, that's what all of the songs sort of say. Someone will be completely unresponsive and haven't responded in days. and they will start to sing with us. And it is, again, just one of these miraculous moments. If there's family members in a room and that person starts to be a part of that song and everyone is there, it's so healing. That's the other thing that really moves me, is that when we come in to sing, how family members who have been holding in their tears, they weep. And clearly they've been waiting for something to allow that space. I think the intimacy that is involved with singing as a group with each other, looking in each other's eyes, just that connection is a spiritual experience. And then bringing that together to someone else, it does feel really powerful. I do think it's a form of prayer.
As soon as we come into this world, we know we're not alone. We're held close. We hear the breathing of those who hold us and sing us to sleep. And we breathe with them. We feel their love as we close our eyes. If we're lucky, we're ushered out of this world as we were ushered in, surrounded by the breathing, humanity, love of other humans. And because of that, we'll feel loved as we close our eyes that last time. Beyond Weeping and Rest in Each Breath were written by Annie Garretson. Calming, Resting, Breathing was written by Patricia Hallam. Ocean Breath and Rest Easy were written by Helen Greenspan. Special thanks to Leigh Davis for sharing these intimate recordings with us. Thanks for joining us for Season 2 of How God Works. We'll be back in the fall with new episodes and a few special live events. If you want to hear details and get sneak peeks, follow us on Instagram at HowGodWorksPod. How God Works is hosted and written by me, Dave DeSteno. Our senior producer is Josie Holtzman of Future Projects. Associate producer is Sophie Eisenberg. Our editor is Ari Daniel. Our executive producer is Genevieve Sponsler. Music and post-production mix and master by Merritt Jacob. The executive producer of PRX Productions is Jocelyn Gonzalez. This podcast was made possible with support from the John Templeton Foundation.